Hello and welcome to Northwest Newsweek. It was a close call for residents in Marathon this week after the main rail crossing in the community was damaged. The bent track created the potential for a train derailment right in the middle of the town during the morning commute. Adam Riley has details.
Thank God that individual was there looking at the single maintaining box.
Disaster was narrowly avoided early Tuesday morning in Marathon after the town's rail crossing was damaged by a passing vehicle. The incident occurred shortly before 9 o'clock and is presumed to have been caused by a tractor-trailer unit that ripped up part of the crossing, compromising one of the rails. Constable Peter Burton is with the Marathon OPP and says had a CP employee not noticed the damage, the situation could have gotten a lot worse real quick.
Apparently there was a train that was about approximately 2 to 4 kilometers out when the stop train was put on, so it's a good thing that was done because we could have had a lot bigger mess than we got.
Crews with CP Rail were on scene quickly removing the damaged concrete and metal and assessed the integrity of the rail. As a result of the work, residents and visitors to Marathon had to use an alternate crossing, but were forced to wait as some rail traffic needed to pass. Mayor Rick Dumas says he is relieved that there was no derailment and asked residents to be patient as repairs were carried out and completed by 7:30 that evening.
Marathon is divided by a railway track through the community, so it's very important for the residents over there to have access to this side of town, specifically with our major infrastructure here with the hospital and the fire department and the OPP on the northern side of the town. So the southern side of town is not totally cut off, but cut off somewhat. We have an emergency crossing further down that we can open up and have access, but it's a little bit more arduous on people to go to and from there.
Burton says the investigation is currently ongoing, adding there is a lot of transport traffic in and around the Marathon area right now, which adds a degree of difficulty for those conducting the investigation, but he is confident that it will only be a matter of time before they find out exactly what happened.
There's only so many tractor trailers that are coming into town right now. There's some contractors in the area that are doing some deliveries, so they've been contacted and they're checking their fleet. And it may be that the driver just felt that he'd hit bottom. The crossing is a little bit of a bump there, so he may have just felt that his tractor trailer hit bottom and didn't realize the significant damage that was done.
Adam Riley, TBT News.
And just prior to that rail crossing incident Tuesday, drivers in Marathon had another road closure to deal with due to a sinkhole. The hole opened up in the middle of Stevens Avenue, forcing residents and those who needed access to Valor's workyard to drive around the obstruction. Mayor Rick Dumas says a pipe that handles stormwater drainage failed. This due to years of road salt runoff that ate away at the corrugated metal, which then ate away at the ground underneath the roadway. Fortunately, nobody was hurt, and the repairs, to an extent, actually fit within the municipality's infrastructure plan.
The only good thing is we were already planning to do Winton and Woodson Streets, which are adjacent to the Stevens Avenue area where the sinkhole was. So the crew was mobilized for those two road work projects. We will now have them come and do these, and we're looking at probably about a $250,000 capital expenditure that will have to come out of our reserve account because this was not, of course, budgeted item.
The Northwestern Health Unit reported a new case of COVID-19 in the Dryden Red Lake area on Friday. And according to the Keewatin-Patricia District School Board, the case has been traced to one of its facilities in Balmertown. Meanwhile, the Casablanca Lake First Nation reported a cluster of 5 new cases. It started with one positive swab announced Wednesday by the Sioux Lookout First Nations Health Authority. A community worker and their spouse, both from outside Casablanca, were tested earlier this month. The spouse tested positive, so contact tracing was done and close contacts were tested. Dr. John Guilfoyle says that resulted in 4 more positive cases, all from the same social bubble as the initial case.
And that unfortunately can happen. If one person in a social bubble gets infected, it's often likely that others in that same bubble will. So that's the situation. And so they're all self-isolating together and they're all well. So that's good. But it is an important lesson to learn that when we travel to communities, we can bring the virus with us.
Anyone who is deemed high risk and has been in contact with any of those cases is now being encouraged to receive a COVID test. Medical Officer of Health Dr. Janet DeMille says it's likely that regional COVID-19 cases will increase as we move into the fall. But she believes the Thunder Bay District is in the best position possible to deal with that uptick. This came during her update to the Board of Health Wednesday afternoon. And as Ryan Bonazzo tells us, the health unit has also started preparing for an uncertain financial future in the wake of looming provincial changes.
As of Friday afternoon, there's just one known active COVID-19 case in the Thunder Bay District Health Unit catchment area. This past month has been the best since the pandemic began, according to Medical Officer of Health Dr. Janet DeMille. The region went more than 3 weeks between cases, but with numbers rising across the province, it's not time to relax.
We're going to enter a more challenging time, and there is uncertainty about what is going to happen. But certainly we couldn't be doing, all of this in a better position than we're in right now.
Those comments came during DeMille's latest update to the Board of Health. But the board is also dealing with looming financial hardship. The district health unit is projecting nearly a $500,000 deficit next year, and the province has shifted more of the funding burden onto municipalities. The Ford government has committed to pay to help mitigate the impacts of that shift this year and next, but that financial help could dry up by 2022. This year, however, the health unit received $279,000 more in provincial mitigation funding than was anticipated when the board presented its budget to municipalities. Instead of refunding that money directly back to the communities it serves, the board has decided to place it in a reserve fund to try to avoid a major increase to municipalities in the coming years.
If we give them some money back and then next year have to go and ask them for twice as much, it would be that much harder.
Some municipalities are probably going to be growing more and more concerned, not even into 21, but what 22 is going to look like. So if we're finding a way to sort of offset and mitigate any increases coming down the pipe in the next couple years, I think that this would certainly help offset any of those concerns.
The board's decision to move that money into reserves will be finalized at its next meeting in October. Ryan Bonazzo, TBT News.
School buses in communities along the north shore of Lake Superior and in the Greenstone area are back up and running. They were idled as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, but now some staffing issues have come up due to the fear of the virus. The East of Thunder Bay Transportation Consortium is facing a bus driver shortage in multiple communities after several older drivers who are more vulnerable to COVID took leaves of absence. Its North Shore region, which runs from Dorian to Pigmobert First Nation, has found extra drivers to fill the gaps, but the bus route in Nakina has been completely canceled due to the lack of drivers, forcing parents to find alternate ways to get kids to school. Anthony Friedrich is the logistics coordinator for the consortium. He says there were issues that already existed and have been accelerated by the pandemic, testing, and criminal record checks.
And they're taking a long time to get. They always took a long time to get. And then once we have a criminal record check, a driver needs to go get a driver's license. So they need to actually go and take their road test. Now, what's really complicated things right now is that it takes so long because of COVID to go get your criminal record check. We can't even book a Service Ontario appointment. We do have drivers in the queue itching to get trained. They just really want to get ready, but taking too long to get the criminal record checks and unable to book appointments to get their driver's license.
Friedrich says if COVID numbers begin to drop, some of the drivers may start to work again. New Basamoong First Nation and the federal government announced a groundbreaking agreement Friday. $19.5 million has been committed to assess, design, and build a new mercury treatment center for the community, which is located about an hour north of Kenora. Minister of Indigenous Services Mark Miller, Chief Waylon Scott, and his council participated in the virtual signing of the historic agreement on Friday afternoon.
I'm pleased to sign the comprehensive response to mercury and human health in Wampsmung Independent Nations. By signing this agreement, we're building a strong foundation that will foster innovative ways to improve the health and well-being of your people. The community health assessment, which is currently underway and very important to this agreement, will identify the specific health needs of community members, including infrastructure in the form of the Mercury Wellness Center.
For myself, and I'm pretty sure I can speak for council when I say that this is a huge accomplishment, something that we'll take great pride in. We've definitely have taken a leap forward for our community when when we get this going. For myself, again, I don't see this as a step forward for our community. I see this as a leap forward for our community.
The center is expected to take 12 to 14 months to build, but there isn't a set date yet for when construction will begin. And some positive news for the city of Kenora after reports that the idled Kenora Forest Products Mill has a new owner. The sawmill was idled last September following what the company cited as a downturn in the market. This put about 100 people out of a job. 3 months later, the owners of the mill, Prendeville Industries, declared bankruptçy, claiming it owed millions of dollars to various agencies. Now, the Canadian press is reporting the mill and related assets have been purchased by Itasca Capital Limited for $11.5 million. The mill is said to be renamed Green First Forest Products Incorporated. The new owners say it can produce up to 100 million board feet per year with 2 shifts, but believe the mill could be optimized to double that amount. When we come back, communities along the north shore of Lake Superior lay out their plans for indoor winter sports. The fate of indoor sports is still up in the air as the COVID-19 situation evolves. That uncertainty has many smaller municipalities questioning whether the operational costs of arenas will be worth it. Adam Riley explains what some communities are planning to do.
This year, Red Rocks Arena will not have its ice rink installed. The decision was made by council during the September 8th meeting, a meeting that Mayor Gary Nelson was unable to attend, and a decision he hopes to see reversed, despite low usage in previous years and an uncertain future.
I know last year we had ice in there and you'd go see the lights on, look into the arena and see 1 or 2 kids on the ice, which is not very good. It's very, very costly to run that plants down there. But I don't know. I would like to see it changed, that we put ice in there yet.
Nelson says Red Rock needs a recreation center to attract new residents and that the municipality has applied for funding to repair and upgrade the facility. During the meeting, Councillor Gord Muir echoed Nelson's thoughts on the lack of users in the facility, but stopped short of supporting the ice installation, instead referencing that the town would be getting an outdoor rink this year as part of the 2020 Fire and Ice Fest.
Parks Canada is, last year we discussed putting a larger sheet of ice down on the waterfront. They're going to do it this year. It's happening. So there is ice in town.
In nearby Nipigon, the arena will be open this year, but with strict COVID-19 regulations in place, which include limits on the amount of people on the ice and in the stands. Scriber is currently consulting with area user groups to see if there will be enough usage to warrant opening the facility. Terrace Bay intends to install its rink this year, but is also consulting with user groups to gather data on usage. And in Marathon, the community's recreation center will be open this year, albeit a little late. Mayor Rick Dumas says this is due to a condenser that needed to be replaced.
Well, you just don't pick up a condenser at your local hardware store. You have to order this thing, it has to be built. So it's coming out of the USA. That's the only place we can source one. And because that's a bit of a delay. So now we're looking at probably end of September, early October before we can get the ice installed.
And finally, in Greenstone, the municipality plans to have all of its rinks in the Beardmore, Geraldton, Nakina, and Long Lac wards operating this year. Adam Riley, TBT News.
A piece of Marathon's history is set to be scrapped in the coming weeks, bringing a 2-year saga to a close. The Peninsula is a 77-year-old tugboat that was purchased and transported from Thunder Bay to its original home in Marathon back in 2018. It ended up being left on the beach as multiple attempts were made to move the vessel to serve as a museum exhibit. Those attempts failed, and the town took the Marathon Historical Society to court. A settlement was recently reached, and it will be dismantled over the next month. Officials with the Historical Society have declined to comment. Mayor Rick Dumas says he appreciates the effort made by those associated with the project, but where the peninsula currently sits, it does pose a liability for the town of Marathon.
We had to consider the liability to the community and to the taxpayers and make a tough decision, because it is a tough decision. You know, they raised $100,000 to buy the tug, and a lot of people put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that project. But at the end of the day, it's looking over the best interest of the community. The council made a decision based on the liability and the interest of the community is to dismantle the tug. That contractor will be in Marathon sometime mid-October to start the process.
Priestley Construction has been awarded the contract for $35,000 with added fees expected due to hazardous material inside the tug that needs to be pumped out. The Marathon boat launch area will be periodically closed to the public during the demolition. 2020 was one of the best years for Nipigon's marina. Despite initial concerns that COVID-19 could have a negative effect on business, many boaters chose to discover their country or even rediscover their own backyard. Michael Mahorovich has details.
Since the spring opening of Nipigon's marina, almost every available slip has been filled by either permanent or visiting boaters who have moored for a stay in the area. Every year, Nipigon Bay is a hotspot for boat traffic from the United States, but due to the ongoing border closure with the U.S., which has now been extended until October 21st, no Americans have been able to visit. However, Nipigon Mayor Richard Harvey says it also means no Canadians have been able to visit the U.S., prompting locals and some from as far away as Toronto to come sail the North Shore region.
But we also had a lot more boats that were for the season in our marina. It seems that a lot more people have purchased boats this year, or people who had boats are getting back into boating. And we've certainly seen that out on the lake as well. I know that in years past, you could go out for a week and see a couple of boats out there. This year, every day, we're seeing 3 and 4 boats when you're out on the lake. So it has been a very good year for the marina.
Harvey adds these numbers serve as a very good indication as to the viability of the marina and as a prime example of why repairs and upgrades to the facility need to be made. Over the years, water levels and winter ice buildup have damaged the docks, so much so that part of the main dock and one side of the docks is off limits. He says council just passed a motion to move into stage 4 of the funding application process, which goes beyond just repairs to the marina.
The whole area down here and integrating that as Parks Canada is preparing to build the headquarters and the interpretive center for the National Marine Conservation Area. So really trying to look at the big picture to really develop this as a real showcase, a real central attraction for Nipigon and the entire area.
Michael Mahorovich, TBT News.
The MPP for Kiiwetinoong is raising concerns about the impact of Bill C-197 on First Nations. Sol Mamakwa says the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act is an omnibus bill that should have included consultation with First Nations.
Economic recovery from the effects of COVID-19 will not happen at the expense of our treaty rights and our lands. Mr. Speaker, this is not open season on our lands, for our lands. The forest and the land is more to us as First Nations than the source of money.
We're talking regularly with them about a whole variety of issues. We value the relationship. We value the input. It's critical that we move forward in that partnership and in the spirit of partnership. So I'm happy to talk with the member opposite anytime, either in the House or outside of the House, about how we can foster that relationship and how we can make it even better.
Next week, Parliament is expected to resume following the surprise prorogation by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in August. Many have seen this as a way for the government to hit the reset button, to clear the way for the government's long-term plans and lay out priorities going forward. Kenora MP and Shadow Minister for Northern Affairs and FedNor, Eric Malillo, says he wants to see support for northern regions, especially in certain fields that have been affected by the pandemic.
We'd want to see some measures to address food insecurity, to address the lack of infrastructure, particularly the broadband, and a lot of the issues that we've seen come to light. Come to light. Though we knew there were issues, but they've become more front of mind during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'd like to see some focus there, support for our tourism industry, of course, but from, I guess, a broader capacity, I'd really like to see a plan to get our economy back on track. We've been racking up deficits at a level that we haven't seen since World War II, and so far the government hasn't really shown a plan of how we're going to recover from this. And
coming up after the break, a Hearst resident is $65 million richer. A retired electrical contractor from Northern Ontario has won the fourth largest lottery jackpot in the province's history. 67-year-old James Wickman from Hearst was the grand prize winner in last week's Lotto Max draw.
I want to present to you this $65 million check from Lotto Max. Yay!
That scared me. That was a pigeon.
Wickman, his wife Erica, and 22 other family members, including some from here in Thunder Bay, traveled to Toronto in a charter bus to accept the big check Wednesday. He's planning to share the jackpot with his 4 children and 12 grandchildren. The winning ticket was purchased at the Canadian Tire gas bar in Hearst, and Wickman explains how it all happened.
And I heard on the radio that somebody in Cochrane District or Tamagami District won the jackpot. So I said, well, I live in Cochrane District, so I'll go check my ticket. And it says, congratulations, you have just won $65 million.
The youngest daughter was jumping and screaming, and I'd like them each to have their own home, no debts, education fund for their kids, you know, that would be nice. Whether they work or not, that's their choice.
Wickman joked that after he sets up his children and grandchildren for life, he's still not sure what to do with the other $64 million. The Path of the Paddle Association has completed an overview map that covers an 1,100-kilometer route for canoers, kayakers, hikers, and cyclists. The map begins at Fort William Historical Park and stretches past the Manitoba border. The Path of the Paddle operates this region's stretch of the Great Trail, which takes travelers through both the wilds and communities of northwestern Ontario. Funding from Destination Northern Ontario allowed the group to contract a map maker who took data from a number of volunteers. The timing of the map's release will allow tourists to plan their trips for next year. Clara Butekoffer, the chair of Path of the Paddle, is hopeful the map will help expand tourism in the Northwest.
As a nonprofit, our role is to really create tourism in the region. And this will enable outfitters, accommodations, small communities, to have more people coming into the communities to be able to shop and to stay while they're planning these trips. We're hoping that this will benefit, there'll be many businesses that will benefit from it.
Maps are $12.95 a piece and can be purchased on Path of the Paddle's website or locally at Wilderness Supply and at Chaltrek Work and Play Outdoors. That's all for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.